Hi, I'm Noor.
Hi, I'm Nikki.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Kevin.
And we're going to be discussing To Kill a Mockingbird using the new Historicism lens. So guys, is there anything from any parts in the book that you can relate during the 1950s, 1960s?
Well, I think an event that particularly stands out is the Tom Robinson trial, and Harper Lee probably used the Tom Robinson trial to portray the issues happening in the 1950s, 1960s.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. I think she used it to show the superiority of the whites over the blacks and how the blacks didn't have like a lot of, they weren't treated as fairly.
Yeah, I think that there wasn't like an actual Tom Robinson trial that she based it off of. She more used it as like a fictional tool to portray all the racial tension and racial bias that was going on at the time, especially with the civil rights movement happening at the same time. Probably had a big impact on her.
What do you guys think would happen if Tom Robinson was white?
Well, I think actually good thing you brought that up. I was thinking that if Tom Robinson was white, it would definitely have a big effect on the trial itself. Like obviously at the time, the black rights were still in developing and they weren't fully established. And we even see in the book that white people have a bigger stance than the African Americans. And I think if Tom Robinson was white, he definitely would have gotten his way since Atticus provided more information and provided more truth.
Do you think To Kill a Mockingbird helped influence, like helped give out rights for African Americans? Like, do you think it made a difference?
Yeah, I think that it did because at the time, most people, like when these type of cases would come up, they wouldn't really see both sides. They just saw like the white side of the story and the background of like the white family or the white person in the trial or whatever. But in To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee purposely shows us both Tom Robinson's background and his family and what he's like and what the Yules are like in their background so that we can see both sides and therefore equally judge. So I think when people like saw this in the book, it probably made them think more about all the other factors that could have gone into the trial.
I think that, Dylan's right. Like, along with To Kill a Mockingbird, like poems and trials that happen, like other like forms of like, help to like open people's minds up because people were really close-minded and they only thought, black people are all like immoral and bad people, but then like they got to see other side.
And like even we even see throughout the book that the lowest class of white people is still higher than the highest class of black people.
Like the Yules and the Cunninghams.
Which in today's world is completely not the case.
But during the 1950s and the 1960s, it was the case.
That was definitely the case.
Yeah.
Harper Lee does a great job in explaining that and showing the different
that's how society was basically run,
Just like I think it's the same with like feminism. Like even the like women had more rights.
Exactly. Okay, so is there any like parts of it or characters you can relate? Because during the 1950s, 1960s, the women's movement was it was a growing thing. So is there anyone you can relate to that?
No.
Well, I think that Harper Lee used Scout as kind of like the girl growing up at the time that doesn't go into all of the womanly rules or requirements. I think she probably used that character to portray her feminist thoughts, and Harper Lee growing up was a tomboy and whatnot, so she probably used Scout's character to say that girls can go past.
And do you guys think so out of like the three main women, or let's say four, so Scout, Calpurnia, Alexandra, and Miss Maudie, who do you think would be like if there were actual people, they would be most supportive of women's rights?
I think this is my opinion, but I think Calpurnia, not only would she be more supportive of women's rights, but like black women's rights.
And she would stand for both types of people, which I think that she would make a bigger point than the rest of the book.
And you see that in the book, like during the scene where Calpurnia is like in the kitchen, and then so basically Walter Cunningham comes over for dinner, and then like he pours like the syrup, and then like Scout like makes fun of him. She kind of like she takes like control, and she acts like a mother to Scout, while like back then it would be so weird for like a black woman who's a servant or a maid to act that way with like
to take in charge even higher than the masses.
So do you guys think there were a lot of people like Calpurnia during the 1950s, 1960s, or do you think Harper Lee used Calpurnia to show like the ideal type of like person or woman during the time?
I think no. I was gonna say I'm not sure, but I think people like Calpurnia, like let's say Rosa Parks, or like like just strong women who stood up for what they believed in. They came kind of like a bit after, maybe.
No, Rosa Parks
was during that time, right? Okay, so yeah, I think.
Well, I think there definitely should, and I'm sure there was a woman that was like Calpurnia, because Harper Lee obviously couldn't just make this up. She needed some type of inspiration in order to create the Calpurnia.
But I honestly feel that Calpurnia, if Atticus was different, then she would be completely different, and she wouldn't assume the power. Like if Atticus was Mr. Yule per se, it'd be a completely different scenario. So.
But do you guys think Atticus was like an example of how men were in the 1950s, 1960s? No, right? He was one of the crowd.
Yeah, he's definitely, he sees things from both perspectives. He doesn't judge people just based on where they're from.
If more people were like Atticus in the 1950s and 1960s, do you think society would have been different?
Yeah, it would have developed like more quickly. Like, wow, it's taken a long time for like people to realize that we're all kind of like equal. At least we're born equal. Yeah. But
I think like society would definitely be more advanced in the idea of like equal rights for both black and white people, and making them have the same rights.
So it mentions school quite a bit here. Do you think the school that Scout and Jem went to is similar to like a school during the 1950s, 60s, or do you think it doesn't really have an effect on them?
I think it probably is somewhat similar to the schools in the 50s and 60s, even though it takes place in the 30s, simply because when Harper Lee was writing this, that's what she was surrounded by, and she didn't put such a huge emphasis on the school that she would want to completely change it.
But I think it was Veris that went to school just once a year. Now, do you think that was a real thing though? Even in like 1950s and 60s, right? People had to go to school at least once to avoid
the law.
I think that was definitely a possibility, since like during like the time that the Harper Lee based the book off was the Depression, and I'm sure this even still continued on to the 1960s, 1950s. Not the Depression, but like the fact that kids would go to school for like a very short amount of time and then go help their parents, whether it be on the farm or whatever scenario.
But at least we saw the start of like government enforcing education on the children. But if you notice, like we don't see that with the black children.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like at school, has there ever been a mention of an African American in the school? Mm-hmm. So that's an example of how schools were in the 1950s, because they were segregated. Yeah. And do you think if African American went to their school, do you think Scout would be your friend, or what do you think?
I think Scout would probably choose for herself if they were friends, but Atticus would probably push her to say, branch out, don't just talk to the white kids, be friendly with the black kids, invite them over. I think Atticus would want her to be friends or be friendly with everybody, but it'd be really up to her.
I think it would definitely, I'm sure Scout would definitely be friends with maybe not every single African American, because they're all different types of personalities, but like there would definitely be, as Dylan said, some type of effect from Atticus, being that Atticus sees everybody as neutral and sees both sides of people.